Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 8
Howdy, howdy.
of The Owlness. We're 8 episodes in. We're a whole stage. It's completely behind us. We're done.
We're getting old.
Now the kickoff clash don't matter no more. Well, I guess it
What's
does.
what's the kickoff clash? I've never heard of that. That's
The past is behind
so
us.
far behind us.
We don't talk about it. It's so far behind. We only look forward to the mid-season
Yeah.
tournament, which is now starting this week. But we didn't have any matches last week, so it's kind of a slow week.
But there's a ton to talk about.
There was a ton to talk about because we purposely pushed off some news that happened before last week because we wanted to focus on Kickoff Clash review last week. So, but a lot happened in literally the last 3 days?
Yeah,
What was it? Sunday?
I think so.
Sunday we got some sick hype Overwatch 2 news.
Yeah.
We got an actual.
It might have been Monday.
What? I don't remember.
I don't know. But huge.
All I know
stuff.
is we got a release date. There's a date, ladies and gentlemen. There's a date, boys.
October 6th.
October
Mark it on your
6th.
calendars.
Mark it on.
Take work off. Yeah.
Take work off.
Yeah. To binge it all day. Unless your work is
it's a game.
playing. Yeah, you can binge games. Haven't you ever had binging game sessions where you just game like all day?
Game like no one's business.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. But no, we got an actual release date as well as a look at some other things to kind of give us like an idea of what we might be getting. So we got to look at, well, I think the elephant in the room obviously is Junker Queen, but we also saw
she's not an elephant. She's a human.
Oh, right.
And she's pretty awesome. I think she's in all the gameplay I've done with her. She's
Did you just
she
say
hasn't disappointed.
all of the gameplay you have done with her?
Yeah. All the game time I've played.
All 0
that
hours.
I've been her. It hasn't disappointed me at all. It was like Chipsa's Overwatch League career.
No, but
like,
he actually
flawless.
played a match.
Yeah. And I saw like a 5-second snippet of her in action.
Of course.
So it's pretty much the same thing.
I know. But yeah, we got Junker Queen, but we got more like actual information about Overwatch 2. So we got like confirmation that Overwatch 2 is going to be free to play, although it wasn't extremely clear as to which parts of it would be free to play, but I'm assuming that it's the PvP aspect, not the PvE, if I were to guess.
Yeah, and that's kind of been, I think most people have been hoping for this.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've seen, I've heard some people online complaining about it, about the whole battle pass system and stuff, and because pretty much any free to play game nowadays has it.
Well,
but I think, and I think honestly, it's the best model that Overwatch 2 could have. I think this was something that a lot of people have talked about historically as something that makes Overwatch 2. I mean, Overwatch 1 as an esport hard to like advertise and stuff is the fact that it has a buy-in cost.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to being free to play, because pretty much all the other big esports are free to play.
Yeah, the only big esport that's not free to play is Rocket League, but Rocket League was never.
Rocket League's free now.
Oh, did they make it free?
Yeah, it's been free to play for like 2 years now, I think.
All right, don't listen to me.
But Call of Duty's the big one that.
So basically, Blizzard's games.
Yeah, Blizzard's games.
Basically,
outside of StarCraft 2, which is free to play.
I wouldn't say StarCraft 2 is a big esport.
It was kind of,
but it's not now. But
it is kind of.
It's a good direction for it to go. I mean, we already knew that the PvP aspect was going to be free for those who already owned Overwatch 1, but now it doesn't even. You don't even have to have Overwatch 1. But they did announce like those of us that already have Overwatch will get some small goodies in Overwatch 2, some skins and things like that. Which I mean, that's cool. I don't.
You get the Jester Sombra skin, which if you're playing Sombra in Overwatch 2, you need that skin because it's a joke.
All of us that have been playing Overwatch for over 6 years need that skin.
That's true.
Which is not you, actually. You're actually saved.
No, I'm a little later.
Saved. But we also saw, like, throughout social media, they were pointing out, like, there were charms on some heroes' weapons, specifically on Cassidy's. There was the Hanzo sake bottle, and even there were, like, various different ultimate lines and also different weapon models slightly. So I would imagine that hinting at the potential that battle pass will include the ability to customize sound, like some ultimate voice lines, like voice lines that usually you don't hear different versions of, adding some different weapon designs and things of that sort. And then we just obviously saw the different skins that we knew about.
One thing I think will be kind of interesting is you look at pretty much any of the free-to-play games that have cosmetic-based battle passes, and it's pretty hard to get cosmetics outside of the the currency and grinding, and like there are ways to get it just by grinding, but Overwatch, one thing that Overwatch 1 has that those games don't have is it's super easy to get cosmetics. Like, like within a year of playing the game pretty casually, you can get skins for every single character, like the skins you want for every character. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that changes in Overwatch 2, because I feel like if it keeps that model, then the incentive to get the battle pass is going to be pretty low.
Yeah.
But they've already said they're moving skins over, so it's going to be interesting to see like how they make it worth the cost to get the battle pass, because like I've already got skins for all the characters, and I like the skins, and new skins are cool, but I'm fine with the ones I have. I haven't bought a new skin in Overwatch in like 3 years. 2 years, something like that. And so it'll be interesting to see if they
which cosmetics they decide to use.
And how they'll make it worth it, potentially even outside of cosmetics with other incentives, while keeping it not anything that affects gameplay.
I feel like if they do anything that's not cosmetics behind a paywall of some sort, it'll be in relation to the PvE. Like the PvP part, because if they put any aspects of the PvP behind a paywall, then they then you get a Battlefront 2 issue again, and we all know how that went down. EA was literally crucified.
I think, although you have to be careful with Blizzard right now, because I don't know if you follow any of the other games, but like Diablo Immortal, but hopefully we don't get any Diablo Immortal.
I've heard,
messes.
But I haven't looked into the Diablo Immortal mess.
So from what I've heard, like if you want to completely maximize everything as high as you can, someone did the math, and it's like $100,000.
It takes $100,000. I remember that.
Yeah, so like I occasionally watch Asmongold, and he like quit the game after spending a few $1,000s on it,
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, and so it's like Overwatch 2 better not have any microtransactions. I hope. I don't think it will.
They'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. And all of this stuff that they gave us over the last couple of days is just gives me hope again for the game. It seems like Team 4 is kind of going in the right direction, right? Because I mean, we have the event, the live stream that's going on Thursday to show us more about Overwatch 2. I think they said it's like kind of the content release plan, kind of how they want to do seasonal events, those sorts of things. And giving us sort of ideas for that sort of thing. But then, I mean, even in the trailer, we got like, this little fox guy. Yeah, they gave us Junker Queen, but then they showed us this little fox.
Which, if any of you guys play Paladins, it's Io. Io's coming to Overwatch. It's gonna happen.
We don't know anything about this fox, but I mean, in the scene that the fox was in, I mean, it looked like the heroes were being speed boosted. There was a tank, 2 DPS, and 1 support, and then this fox. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Which I honestly, I don't think the Fox is going to be a hero itself. I
No.
think it's going to be like a deployable that a hero has.
Mhm.
But I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like it
Yeah.
looks different, you know.
And then of course they showed Junker Queen. They only showed some of her abilities, but we know that we'll be getting her cinematic on Thursday. And just the fact that we're getting a cinematic, like
Yeah.
it's been like what, it's been like
ages,
3-4 years since we got one of those. It was, what was the last one we got? It was like Ash. Was that the last cinematic we got?
I think
like
it was
real cinematic was Ash.
Yeah, because with Echo, Sigma,
Well, Echo was in
Batiste,
Sigma.
they did like these fake little.
They did
like,
the comic ones that Doomfist had.
So
I mean, just the fact that we're getting that is exciting. But then, so it's like that came out of nowhere. We did not expect that. I'm glad that they gave us a date, and I think the only reason they were able to give us a date is because of the decision they made to decouple the PvP from the PvE. Because if they kept them together, I don't think we'd be getting what we would be getting currently.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we come out of the weekend like, oh, October 6th, Thursday, they're going to announce stuff. And then what do they hit us with literally this morning? Oh, by the way, the next beta is starting in like 2 weeks. Sign up on Thursday.
And yeah, so it starts June 28th. What day of the week is that? Is that next? Oh, that's 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from
when
today.
we're recording. We're recording
Tuesday,
on Tuesday,
June 28th.
So,
and it says, I mean, and it'll be on console
and then
as well.
Sign-ups start the same day as the stream on Thursday. And so
and it'll be
sure
on
you sign up.
PC and console, so console players, you won't be left out anymore. But what I find interesting, that Junker Queen is being added to this beta. So it's like they announced her as a part of like the release date for Overwatch 2, but she's being included in this beta, which makes me wonder, like, does that mean we're going to get Junker Queen for Summer Showdown? Are we gonna have Junker?
I didn't realize that.
Are we gonna have Junker Queen for this season of the Overwatch League? I mean, we might get other heroes as well, but that's pretty cool that we're getting Junker Queen. And it says a new map. I believe that new map will probably be the Rio de Janeiro map, because we saw it in the video, and then there were screenshots of that floating around on Twitter. But it's exciting that we get the new beta. We're gonna get news. Like, they're actually communicating with us. It's been so long. We actually get communication. We get to know what's happening.
And I don't know about you, but so I was just watching the Microsoft stream, just seeing what they had. I wasn't expecting anything Overwatch related,
and then it just came.
And then I got distracted doing other stuff, and I came back, and it was like halfway through an Overwatch thing, and I was like, no way, and I rewound to the beginning, and man, so hype. Like, and I don't think anyone was really expecting it, you know. And
not at an Xbox showcase, like that was the last place anybody would have thought. But I mean, Microsoft's buying Blizzard, so I mean,
and I think one thing, side note, I don't know how relevant it is to anything we're really talking about, but it's interesting to think about with it being purchased by Microsoft, and Microsoft is putting everything on Game Pass.
Overwatch 2 will probably go on Game Pass.
Overwatch 2 is probably going to be on Game Pass.
The PvE at least.
Yeah. And so the thing is like that alone drops the cost down significantly for people that don't want to.
Yeah, it's just so much easier for people to get access to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the PvE, it's like I don't think people were worried about the PvE costing anything, because the PvE is the new game. PvE is Overwatch 2. The PvP is just an updated Overwatch 1. So it's like if you made people pay to get an overhauled Overwatch
what they've
1,
already paid to,
they're not going to be happy. But the PvE, it's like we don't. I don't think it. Hopefully, it doesn't come out as a $60 release. But I mean, if it does, people will be like, "Oh, why is it $60?" But they'll still buy it because it's a new game. And Blizzard has a history of being able to make story-driven games. Like, if they mess this up, then Blizzard's messing up. Like they know how to do that sort of thing. So I'm excited for Overwatch 2, and I'm just so happy that we have a release date. We can look forward to October, and now we get beta stuff starting in a couple weeks. So that was really the highlight of the weekend, and just the last week was just all this Overwatch 2 news, because there was news elsewhere, but it's like everything else was taken over.
Speaking of exciting news. We do have a new sponsor this week.
I'm unaware of. I just know that it exists, but I don't know what we've
Yeah,
actually got.
so it's actually a good buddy of mine. His name is Spud.
What kind of Spud?
This kind of Spud. No, his name is Spud. Spud the potato.
What kind of potato?
Potato.
What?
Just a potato.
There are different kinds of potatoes.
It's a potato. It's in the ground. You dig it up. You eat it. It's like.
All right, just potato.
Just Spud the potato.
Spud the potato.
Spud the potato.
Brought to
Thanks
you
for
by
sponsoring our
brought to
video
you by
and
Spud
yeah,
the potato.
yeah.
So anyways, now we'll put aside the Overwatch 2 hype. We'll contain ourselves, and now we've got a bunch of team news. That's the news and stuff that's come out for teams over the last couple weeks, and like there's a lot for the most part. So we're not gonna take it too much time to go through and like talk about them in detail, but we will talk about them and see what each one is. So the first one that we want to talk about is the Vancouver Titans. So first, they announced that they were releasing their head coach Flubby and their assistant coach Pugh, who have been with the team since it melted down in 2021. So these two have been with the entire rebuild process. And I feel like the first year or two, like you can give them passes, but I feel like this year they weren't getting the results. Yeah, I think it's time to move on. So nothing against them, but you haven't been showing results. Yeah, they haven't been put in the best situations, but like, come on. And then
it's part of the job.
Part of the job. And I who knows if they'll get picked up by anybody else. I mean, after their tragic showings the last 2 years, probably not.
But maybe a contenders team or something.
Maybe contenders.
Like hopefully they are able to find something to do, but I think their releases make sense.
It makes sense. And then they also are releasing Psycho. Now this release doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Psycho didn't get like a terribly large amount of playtime, so like we didn't get to see too much of him, and like the last we saw him he was playing Doomfist.
Well, and it seemed like a lot of the time that he played, he definitely wasn't the weakest link, you know?
No,
like,
he wasn't.
And like, he had a few moments that it was like, oh, the Titans kind of have life, and Psycho was a big part of those, you know, occasional moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it's a little weird.
I mean, because they signed Mirror during the kickoff clash, and I mean, I guess Mirror and Psycho just play the same things, and I guess maybe they just like Mirror better than Psycho. I mean, I'd love to see. I'd hope he'll get picked up again, but I mean, flex DPS isn't really a spot that a lot of teams are needing right now. There aren't a lot of teams that don't have one, so he may just go down to contenders and wait for another chance. But yeah, this release was not something we were expecting, whereas the coaching changes were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. The Psycho drop just kind of came out of nowhere. But then to fill the coaching vacancy, they're bringing in the Iron Shoulder himself, David Pay, formerly of the LA Gladiators. The Gladiators, I don't remember if they released him or if he stepped away after the 2021 season, but he's been in the league since the inception with the Glads. So he is a veteran of the league. He's a smart guy, knows Overwatch. The only concern is like he was with the Glads for 4 seasons, and I mean, when you look at those Glads teams, I wouldn't say that the Gladiators ever had a bad roster. They always had good rosters, and they won one title of sorts. They won last year's Countdown Cup, and that was it. That's it. In 4 years, with good teams, DP did that. So
yeah, that being said, it's like if you have a good coach, it's easy to say that the team just had good players, you know? It's like it's hard to tell how much of it's coaching and how much of it is good players, because like not all the players that we see as good players we saw as good players when they entered the league necessarily, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like not everyone entered the league as proper, you know? And so I think we can say, yeah, they had a good roster, but how much of that was the good coaching that made the roster look good?
That's true. That's also true.
And so it could very well be that he has a big role in, you know, developing these players in a way that makes them look really good.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that he's able to do something with this Titans roster. Hopefully he's able to have some kind of success with them. But like, we look at the signing and we look at the Titans and we look at the rest of their season. Do we think it really makes a difference?
I mean, at least not in the next like
Not this
6 or 7
this not
weeks.
this stage. This stage is brutal. But like,
Yeah,
does
I think
does the DPay signing help potentially edge them past teams like New York and Paris and Boston, who have
I
currently
think
just rolled them?
I think at this point, like, depending on how, like, it's hard to say really because we don't have, any data on it, but I think like
Mm-hmm.
this could be enough to edge them over Paris. I think the other teams it's going to be harder. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how long it takes them to adjust to the changes, and if we can see some life. I think this is definitely going to be something we'll talk about more as the season goes on.
Well, and even though
Um,
they have a hard midseason schedule, basically playing 6 of the 8 kickoff clash teams, if they can show some life against some of the other team, if they can show take a map or two off of some of these teams, and that'll be a good trend in the right direction going into Summer Showdown when they do end up playing teams like Paris and they end up playing Toronto, and if they're
yeah.
able to kind of do those sorts of things. So I think that the DPay signing is definitely an upgrade over what they had. And like, nothing against Pew and Flubby, but DPay
And one of the
is
nice things is the next, like, this whole tournament cycle, their schedule is just like
nobody
ridiculous.
expects them to do
Yeah,
anything.
and so no one expects them to do anything. And so if they do anything, that looks great. Also, it allows them to be able to focus on,
Improving instead of trying to
just,
win
yeah,
matches.
improving as a team. It allows them to focus on scrims, hopefully. Losing is hard though, like, so it could have a big mental toll, even
Yeah,
though
but
they're
I feel
supposed
like
to
if they
lose.
if they look at that schedule
But
and they'll be like, okay, these games are really tough, because like
yeah,
losing a close match hurts more than losing a match where you go in knowing you're probably just gonna get stomped.
yeah, and with that, if they can keep that mindset of
It's
this
okay.
tournament cycle is just like preparing for the future, like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to relax, then I think they have potential to do some cool things in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
I don't think like there's no chance they make playoffs. There's no chance
Well,
they
well, the Countdown Cup is doubling as the play-in tournament. So I think for the Titans, their goal is that play-in tournament.
yeah,
Is to use the last 2 stages to try and get themselves into a position where they can at least get into the play-in tournament and work their way up. But yeah, the mid-season tournament is kind of out of reach, and we'll talk about why a little later. Outside of the fact that they're winless, but they just have probably the hardest strength of schedule out of any team that's in their situation. But the DPay signing is good. They've got a good head coach now, but a team that doesn't really have a head coach now. Toronto released KDG. What is that? A week ago today. So on the 7th of June.
yeah.
Now,
I'm surprised they haven't announced a new coach.
well, I think it was either their GM or one of them said like the Moby Dick, who I believe was their assistant coach, is the interim head coach
Oh,
currently.
okay.
But they did put out a tweet saying they were looking for coaches. So like they're doing like open submissions, which is kind of weird. So
Yeah, so if you're an Overwatch coach looking for an
go join the
Overwatch
Toronto
league,
Defiant. You have to be fluent in Korean though, I believe. That's what I remember seeing. But
yeah,
this release, there were rumors leading up to this, because remember there was the report from Halo that Muse and Finale requested a trade, and then every PR speak from the team, from the owner, like the GM and stuff, saying nobody submitted trade requests. Muse said he didn't do anything, and then Muse and Finale like then started getting some playtime. Like, oh, okay, they're trying to mess with it, and then KDG gets released. I'm not gonna say I find it hard to believe those things aren't connected. There's definitely got to be some connection there.
there's something going on.
And even so they announced that KDG gets released, and Logix, who was on the Toronto Defiant last season, tweets, "Thank Fetch took you long enough."
Yeah,
And
kind of a
we
yikes.
and we know that there were rumors from last season that KDG was actively leaving Beast Halo and Logix out of like discords and stuff with the team because they were NA players and the rest of the team was Korean. So because KDG kind of was just, a lot of it was, he was picked up because of the success he had in 2020 with the Philadelphia Fusion, which, they did great that season, and that's kind of why he was able to land this job. But then he hasn't really been able to do much the last 2 seasons. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we had the, the reports earlier in the season with Muse and Finale. So he'll probably get picked up by another team if there's any other team looking for a coach, because I mean it's kind of under this just kind of happens. All it is just rumors, and then suddenly he's released. There's nothing, to say that he's not a good coach, but he may have,
as far as what we know,
he may have. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know, because I mean Philadelphia Fusion in 2020 were a mixed roster, so I mean it can't be like he has something against Western players, because I mean he had success with that team. So we'll see what happens. But now Toronto's in even a weirder position. They go from being really boring to watch to now having basically a new head coach, and probably going to be even more boring to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think this changes anything in my eyes. Like, I still think the Defiant are the most boring team in the West.
Well,
and
yeah, at least Vancouver, you're like, no, we're going to watch them fall over
yeah,
again.
that's the thing. The teams worse than Defiant, they're interesting to watch because they're like, they're either so bad it's interesting, or you think, oh, maybe there's a chance.
Yeah.
And the team's better than Defiant, there's stuff worth watching, but Defiant, I have zero feelings
identity
about them. Yeah,
and I think we talked about that last week in their kickoff Clash performances. They just kind of looked lost. They didn't really look comfortable on anything. They were just kind of there. They showed up, it got boomed out, and there they go.
And who knows? Maybe a change in coach could change things. I don't think it will, though.
I don't think so. I think that it's the team is kind of ingrained, because they just kind of don't do anything. But on the other side of things, a team that almost always does things is the Shock, which, if I'm being honest, this signing is a little weird to me. So the San Francisco Shock signed Mikeyy from Maryville Esports, who's a main tank. I don't know too much about him. I'm gonna be honest. I will just be honest. I don't know too much about him, but I didn't think Kaluj was doing terrible on Winston. So Mikeyy was signed to play Reinhardt. Surely that's what it was, right? Like,
well, I think, I'm just looking up right here. Yeah, so Kaluj was on Maryville as well.
Yeah.
Right before he got signed to Overwatch League. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was, partially his say in bringing on Mikeyy, like either on his recommendation or just the fact that while they were scouting him, they also saw Mikeyy in action and stuff. But I think it makes sense. I think the Shock needed someone to fill that role, not because Kaluj isn't able to fill it, but I think now that they can divide up the tanks, they can focus on playing, more specific characters and just grind it. And I think doing that will open them up a little bit, especially because I think with Kaluj being able to play as many different characters as he can, I wouldn't be surprised if Mikeyy was kind of the same way.
Well, but but if you're gonna have two, superplex tanks, you just want one. Because I mean, I brought this up last week with like the difference between like Dallas and Shanghai versus Seoul and even Glads, where it's like having to swap tanks in and out. It kind of hinders you a little bit, because now you kind of give away what you're going to play, and now you have different calls as well. So I think they should have just let Kaluj keep going. But then again, I mean, their shift to just starting to randomly play Doomfist comps in the tournament may have been a sign that they weren't comfortable. So, because they weren't trying to play Rhine comps really at all. Kaluj, I think, pulled it out once or twice, and it didn't look too great. So if I had to guess, Mikey's coming in to be a Rhine player, if anything, because Kaluj looked pretty good on the Winston.
Yeah, I could see that. I think it'll be interesting to see if Mikeyy gets playtime, but I'm with you. I don't know a ton about him.
I don't know a ton about him.
I trust the Shock.
Yeah, I trust Krusty.
Maybe more than I should.
The Krusty Crack Pipe, it's coming out again. Here we go.
Yeah.
The Krusty Crack Pipe, the good old trademark. We'll move on. The only news coming out of APAC is the Guangzhou Charge released Molly, which, I mean, they signed Faraway from, after he left the Hunters, and Faraway is really good. But I thought Faraway and Molly were like two of the good players, but like Molly just doesn't get playtime, like at all.
Yeah.
He hasn't played since he was on like the Hunters back. No, was it the Hunters or was it the Spark? I don't remember. It was like he's hardly got any playtime. Like, yeah, he has a ring, but he was on the bench the whole time.
Yeah. So I
There was a report that I have up here from Halo where it's like saying that the Valiant have signed him. So it seems like he might have already been picked up. The Valiant haven't announced anything yet, unless I just completely spaced it and missed something.
Yeah,
But as of June 14th, Molly has not officially been signed, but he's rumored to be going to the Valiant, and I think Molly is definitely an upgrade over Coldest.
Yeah.
So
I
I think he'll help the Valiant get better. But it's just unfortunate that he had to play second fiddle to Far Away. He kind of was like, "Oh, I got off the bench of Dragons," and he goes to charge. He's like, "Now's my chance." And then Far Away comes in. He's like, "Just kidding, not my chance yet." Well, wait, next time he's gonna join the 4-team squad. Whoa, here we go. Yeah. Where he was on the bench for like 2 of the teams. So it's exciting that he'll get hopefully another shot on the Valiant if this rumor from Halo is true. But then moving to the final player news, probably the most confusing signing from frontwards to backwards. So Vulcan's 30-day contract with NYXL expired, so Vulcan has been let go. And this just makes me scratch my head. What? Why? Why was he ever on the team? What was he doing? What was he here?
He was my guess is he was looking for an apartment to stay
in New York temporarily.
And in order to stay with the team, because he was friends with all the Koreans there, I guess.
Yes, of course.
But in order to stay there, he had to be a member of the organization, and they wanted an extra player anyway.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's my official guess. Yeah.
It just doesn't, because initially we thought he was just signed to get that 6th player, but then it was Custa or Sideshow that was talking like that 30-day contract players don't count towards like the league minimum, like having the league minimum, which I can't confirm or deny that. I don't really know. But if that's the case, then him being signed to the team makes even less sense. If he didn't ever count towards the league minimum, which we assumed was why he was signed, it doesn't make any sense. And like if you go to the Overwatch League website, their coach, Kooky, is listed as a player. So NYXL are literally doing everything they can to avoid having to sign a 6th player.
It makes no sense, but it seems to work out for them. They're doing so well this year.
And singular win. NYXL I don't know why they're avoiding signing players when they need to. There are holes in their roster. It's not going too great.
They're just waiting for Junker Queen to enter the game. That's when
Kellen's just gonna pop off.
Kellen's gonna be a Junker Queen one trick.
Kellen's gonna be the Junker Queen one trick. Oh my goodness. And then the final piece of team news that is not related to players, but is actually the first time that this has officially been like something that's announced, because what the LA Valiant did does not count. That is not the same as what the Paris Eternal announced. What was this, on the 1st of June?
Wait, did you say Paris Eternals?
They're still in Paris.
Yeah, for now. But starting next year,
they will be the Las Vegas Eternal, which actually sounds like a pretty cool name. We know that the ownership group of the Eternal is American, so they're probably just moving to Vegas because it's easier to operate.
Yeah.
And we
European Overwatch, is
rest in peace.
Struggle bus.
Yeah. And we knew that something like this was coming because the parent organization like filed for trademarks for Vegas related teams for their Call of Duty League spot as well. So we kind of had like an idea that something like this was coming. But I think what is the most interesting about this is like, this is the first of anything that we've gotten in regards to the league next year.
Yeah.
We don't know anything about, season 6 for 2023, but if the Paris Eternal are moving to Las Vegas, well then surely something's going to be happening, because you're not moving a team if there's no league.
Well, and also on a business side of things, like you wouldn't make any sort of change if you're planning on just closing things down. And so this is confirmation from one organization that
They expect there to be something going on.
They're planning on having a future in the league, and
It's
that's
like
kind of
even if there's
cool.
plans to like sell the spot to somebody in Vegas, there's still plans to have the team exist in some form. And this
Yeah.
kind of goes along with the report. I think it was from Jacob Wolf maybe it was last month, that Blizzard, like, even though they're owed so much money by a lot of the Overwatch League and Call of Duty teams because of COVID, they like push those payments off. And I think that might help the league continue for a first, especially going into next year, because next year is when the Microsoft buyout would become official if it's,
Yeah.
allowed. And I think Microsoft having ownership of Blizzard and being able to have the league in their hands, especially when Overwatch 2 will be in full swing come next season, hopefully. I hope that season 6 moving forward it'll be kind of get back on track a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of been
hopefully we're able to start growing again rather than slowly shrinking.
slowly imploding on ourselves. All the Overwatch 2 news I think will help though, for sure. Because even though like all the viewership problems and stuff that we've been having this season have largely just been we can't play Overwatch 2. Like the players have complained about it. Everyone's like, yeah, it's great watching these pros play, but I can't play the game, so I actually don't care to watch, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's good that we have the Overwatch 2 news, and then having the Paris Eternals saying they're going to be moving gives at least some hope that there will be a league next year, at least in some form. But that's the news, at least as of the 14th of June. That's the news that we have. Overwatch 2 related and team related. Knowing our luck, something's going to come out tomorrow and we're just going to completely miss it. But, such is life. But then the next thing I want to talk about is a tweet from Brad Rajani, who's the head coach of the Atlanta Reign. So he was bringing up concerns about the midseason tournament and kind of how it's formatted. And I personally didn't realize this is how it was happening. I don't think a lot of people did. Apparently, in one of the in the community updates for the league early on, it was kind of said this way, but I guess we kind of all just beefed and missed it. So he's talking about how the qualification for the midseason tournament takes into account the kickoff clash qualification matches and the bonus points that come through, effectively saying that if you did well in the kickoff clash, you're probably going to qualify for the midseason tournament, and if you didn't, you're probably not going to make it to the midseason tournament, which is really unfortunate for teams that were like right on the cusp of things. So like when we go and look at like the standings, so it's like, yeah, the London Spitfire are tied record wise with like Justice and Reign, but they're a point down. So they could finish like if London finishes with the same record as Washington or Atlanta will make it in. London won't because of that bonus point. And you even look at the teams at the top, Shock, Fuel, and Gladiators could literally go 1-5 and still make the tournament.
Yeah.
Whereas the Titans could literally go undefeated and not make it.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
I kind of understand why it's done this way, because like the midseason tournament is kind of framed in a way it's like the best teams of the league up till that point in the season instead of just in that meta. But it's like we know we're gonna have we're gonna have the patch come in with the Zen buff, the soldier nerfs, so the meta is gonna shift at least slightly. So some teams at the bottom could come back up, and so like Brad's concerns about the kickoff clash results heavily weighing into Hawaii are fair. I mean, even in APAC, I mean, Seoul has 7 points.
Yeah.
And like what's weird is like Seoul through Fusion have 7, 6, 6, and 5. Chengdu has 2.
Dang.
Like Chengdu is basically already out of the running. Philly just has to win 3 of their 6 games, and Chengdu is out. They physically cannot make it. So it's like APAC especially, the door's just kind of been shut on the bottom 3 teams. I mean, granted, I don't know what world we live in which Charge would make it, but I mean, they don't even have
but there should be the
they don't even have a chance.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate that that's the case. So it's like we're going to see the same teams in midseason that we saw in Kickoff Clash, outside of 1 or 2 NA swaps, because London is only 1 point between Atlanta and Washington. So there is room there for them to potentially leapfrog if they win a match more than Atlanta and Justice do and kind of make up for lost ground.
I don't think that this will, like, this could come into play, and if it does, it's kind of annoying, the bonus points. But I honestly, I don't think it will change much
No.
from what would have happened anyway. I don't think enough is changing in the meta to
Mm-hmm.
make any of the bottom teams a top team. I think, the one exception maybe being
London.
APAC, just and London, but APAC, just the
Just because it's so close.
fact that it's so close, but the scoreboard doesn't, like, the point count doesn't
the point
represent
count
it.
doesn't reflect that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
APAC could, but yeah, you're right. Outside, I think London is the only exception to where the way that the format is could really screw London over. Because London
Yeah.
could have a really good stage and still not make it again. I mean, if London have a second good surprising stage and then once again don't make the mid-season tournament, that's just unfortunate for that team.
Yeah.
So I hope that it doesn't come back to be an issue for teams like London and even Boston, who were showing some signs of life towards the tail end of the kickoff clash. And hopefully maybe they can sneak in, because I mean, we watched that kickoff clash and you and I both agreed we would have rather see London over Toronto. Like,
yeah.
So all they need is one of those teams to just kind of fall on their face. But I mean, like, Toronto's 2 points ahead of London, so they literally have a 2-match lead. So it is unfortunate, but I don't imagine we would see like at least 7 of the same 8. Like, at most, one team would swap. That's probably about it. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
I think it is time to talk about a potato again. I'm just kidding. Let's go into let's make some standings.
Some combined region power rankings, even though they didn't play each other at all. I think it's still fun to do combined region power rankings.
But quickly, because we've got a lot of games
matches
to spread.
Anyway, so we're looking at the standings. So the most clear one, Glads are number 1, right? I think we talked about this last week, where we're pretty sure Glads are the best team in the world.
Yeah.
So Glads are a clear numbre uno. I'm trying.
And I think Seoul at second.
Yeah, I would say Seoul would also. Yeah, Seoul would be second. But then third, I genuinely believe. Oh, third is Fuel, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I think Fuel is third. But then after that, I think that Philly and Shanghai are better than Atlanta and Shock.
That's exactly what I already put down on my thing. I think, even though Shanghai loses against Philly every time they play against each other, I think Shanghai
the better team.
Is the better team against anyone else.
So are we thinking Shanghai 4 then, Philly 5?
Yeah, that's what I'd put. With the asterisk next to Shanghai that says
they will lose to Fusion.
Except when they're playing against Fusion.
So those are the top teams, and then Atlanta Shock, right? Like, that's pretty.
Yeah.
All right, so we have the clear stuff. Now we go to the confusing mess that falls beneath. I want to say that Spark goes under Shock. I think Spark looks, out of the mid-table teams, of the teams that I'm considering to go in that mid-table, I think Spark probably are the most likely there. Because
yeah, I think the kickoff clash was kind of rough for them, but I think outside of the kickoff clash, they look pretty good. And I think, especially compared to the other Western team, like the Western teams, I think they have the edge over. And so, yeah, I would put Spark next.
And then I would put, so the next 2 teams then that would go in that category are probably Mayhem and Outlaws. I would put Mayhem above the Outlaws, just because the Mayhem have a clear path forward. Like, they have a more complete team, whereas the Outlaws, who knows what's happening with that team.
Yeah, Outlaws are in a weird spot right now where the team they've been playing, the comp they've been playing, just isn't going to work long term for them. They need to add some variety.
Yeah, but I do definitely think that they are, I mean, because they beat Toronto, and I think they would beat, I guess it depends on which Justice would show up, but they would beat teams like Chengdu, they would beat London. So I think you kind of have to put Houston under Florida just by process of elimination.
Yeah.
But then
I
after Outlaws is when we start getting a little weird, because then you have teams like Chengdu, Toronto, Washington, London. who are the ones that I'm looking at, and even like Valiant as well put into that category. So where do we want to put these? Because like which Washington are we ranking?
Well, I think the fact that Washington, you have to ask that with Washington, puts them beneath some of these teams. I'd probably go.
I would almost put I would pick Spitfire over Defiant and Justice if they played.
Yeah, and so I think Chengdu I would put above London.
Okay.
And then London, Toronto, Washington.
Well, if
Valiant.
Yeah, I was like, if Valiant played Toronto, would you take Valiant or Toronto?
Yeah, so let's go Hunters, Spitfire, Valiant.
And well, hang on, but Hunters just lost to Valiant.
But I don't think you can.
No, I think you definitely can. Their last match apiece, it was a loss to Hunters. Hunters lost to Valiant. So
yeah, but it was Valiant's one win.
They
have
went
one
to
win.
map 5 against the three of the top APAC teams.
But they lost.
They still went to map 5. What did Chengdu do? They got rolled.
So would you put Valiant above London and Chengdu? Would you go Valiant, Hunters, Spitfire?
I would put Valiant above Hunters, but if Valiant and Spitfire played... If Valiant and Spitfire played, I don't know who I would take. I think Hunters go below Spitfire and Valiant. So I would keep Spitfire above Valiant. I think they're probably comparable, and then I would put Hunters.
Yeah.
And then I would put...
Defiant, Justice.
I think Justice, even on a bad day, beats Defiant. Personally.
Okay.
That's just me personally.
Yeah.
So, whoops. I keep messing up the crop. I've done like fun things with the crop on... All right. So yeah, I would put Justice above Defiant. Okay, I did it again. And then I'm thinking Boston, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that...
And then the Charge? Or would you put the Charge above Boston?
Well, I think...
And I think this is probably the hardest spot, because...
I would put Charge above Boston, and then I would put...
Yeah.
Do we think Paris could beat Boston?
No, I'd keep Paris under Boston.
Okay.
I'd keep Paris under New York.
I think Paris beats New York. Because Paris, was looking better at the end of the kickoff clash. Whereas New York just looked lost the entire time.
I'll allow it, but I think...
And then, of course...
Do they play each other soon?
I think they do.
I hope they do.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they do. I'm pretty sure they play this week.
Oh, nice.
Would you look at that? But I think they're in the same category. I think you can kind of interchange them. So our current standings then, according to the Owl Nest, according to these two idiots here, we have top to bottom, Gladiators, Dynasty, Fuel, Dragons, Fusion, Reign, Shock, Spark, Mayhem, then the Outlaws, Spitfire, Valiant, Hunters, Justice, Defiant, Charge, Uprising, Eternal, Excelsior, Titans. And like, I definitely think there are, like, I feel like you could interchange Mayhem and Outlaws. And I definitely think you could interchange Spitfire, Valiant, Hunters, Justice, Defiant. Because I feel like those 5 teams, especially Justice, because Justice on a good day could jump just like below Spark, if not above Spark. But we don't trust the Justice.
Yeah.
I will never trust the Justice ever again, unless they're playing a bottom tier team. And even then, they could lose to Boston.
Even then, it's questionable. Yeah.
Like they did earlier. They lost to Boston. So I think this is a good standings to have, and I think majority, like at least the top half of these teams will probably stay where they are. Like I don't imagine Gladiators really moving all that much. I don't see Dynasty or Fuel moving all that much. It's like any movement between teams, I think will be within kind of their respective brackets. They're kind of within 3 or 4 spots of where they are, either up or down. But then this bottom tier, like basically everything below Defiant, just kind of hurts.
Yeah. I agree with
And
that.
even you could lump Defiant in. I mean, it's not like Defiant's as bad as New York or Vancouver, but they're just as boring to watch. And I would rather watch Titans play than Toronto.
Yeah.
Because at least when Titans play a team, you at least know it's going to be an entertaining stomp.
Yeah,
But
and there's always that possibility of something crazy happening.
Whereas when Defiant plays, outside of when they play the Outlaws week 1, you're never like, oh, the Defiant could upset this team. You're like, probably not.
Yeah. And even if they did, it wouldn't be like crazy. It would be like
they beat, they beat Justice or something.
Well, but even like let's say Defiant play against LA and win. Is your first thought like, "Oh my gosh, Defiant are amazing"? No, my first thought is, "Oh
What
man,
happened to
the
Gladiators?
Glad's through." Yeah, that's the thing. It's never going to be the Defiant did well. It's always going to be that team did bad.
We'll never give Defiant the credit. We'll be like, oh, the other team
And
just kind of screwed up.
And that's probably just like an internal mental thing because the same would be true of the Titans, but it's like
yeah. That's the unfortunate truth. But I'm happy with these power rankings, and obviously after next week we'll split the regions again. We'll go back to doing this, but we will only do combined rankings. We'll only do combined rankings after each stage, even if they don't play each other. We'll still do it just to kind of get a good feel for things. But I mean, I feel like outside of the massive gap between Glads and the rest of NA and well, no, because I don't feel like there's a big gap between Dynasty and the rest of NA. They just had an easy matchup against Fusion.
Yeah.
Like APAC is close, but like there's literally a Grand Canyon between Gladiators and Fuel, and then another canyon between Fuel and Atlanta and Shawhawk, which is scary. That the top two teams in NA, there's a gap between them, and then there's a gap between both of them and everyone else.
Which I think it'll make, the combined tournament, the midseason.
I'm so excited for the midseason
really
tournament.
Interesting because it's going to be interesting to see how the APAC teams do against the Fuel and the Glads.
Yep. All right, so those are our power rankings, but now we have a bunch of NA teams to predict, because as we learned from the end of the kickoff clash, the APAC teams were not going to be playing in week 1. They'll start next week, so it's just the 13 NA games. So we are going to be prepping all of them like we did before week 1 of the season. We are going through every single game.
But speed round.
Well, we don't have to speed round. And for context, both of us are tied with our pred record. We are both 20-6. Somehow, over the course of 26 guesses, we are tied. So this is the week that one of us could pull ahead. If we get a bunch
London.
Thank you, Outlaws. They got me. Well, they got me a pred and then lost me 2, I think.
Yeah, so maybe
not the Outlaws. I don't really know. But so we're gonna go through each one and we'll see kind of how things go. So we're just gonna go in order based on the schedule. So the first match of the week is Florida Mayhem, London Spitfire, and this one hurts to pred because we both love Florida, but you're like actually just on top of London. And like I want to pred London, but I can't. For me, I'm leaning on the Mayhem. I'm sorry, but I think they're better because I think Mayhem are better than Outlaws, who beat London pretty handily.
I think you've got a point there, but your point is boring. If I've learned anything this season, it's the minute you think London aren't going to do it, they're going to do it. And so I think I'm predding London. I'm predding London. Just we've got to mix things up. We can't.
I think this will be a really fun match because
I think it'll be a fun match. I think both teams are awesome to watch. They're fun to watch. If anyone's gonna meme during a game, it's gonna be them.
Two teams. I hope that we get some funny stuff coming out in this game. But I just couldn't, because I've been high on the Mayhem so far this season, and I was like, I'm not gonna suddenly be down on them against London. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Unlike with like the Atlanta match where I predded Atlanta were like we both kind of, even though I predded Atlanta, I did kind of acknowledge, I was like, no. If Atlanta were to lose to somebody, it'd be London. But like Florida doesn't have any like weakness, like mental weaknesses. They haven't, when they lose, they just lose to better teams. And London, in my mind, is not a better team. It's as simple as that.
The way I see it, like the way London wins this game, and it's gonna happen, and this is how it's going to happen.
Okay, elaborate.
Florida is going to be tricked into playing the Reinhardt mirror match, and they lose it. And they play it because it's fun. It's the beginning of a tournament, so it's low stress.
But see,
They're
here's
playing a fun
the
team.
problem though, because unlike with Atlanta, Gator was just kind of like there, but someone is actually like a Chad. If there was any other main tank that could match Hottie's Chadness, it would be someone. Have you seen the guy like just go nuts after matches? Like the guy's insane.
Yeah, but he hasn't been grinding the Rhine. And so I think London can. I think there's a world which London wins, and that's the world we're living in. And so yeah,
all right,
it's gonna be London.
London Mayhem should be fun, but then we go from that
Fuel
fun
shock.
we go to a really good match. Well, I don't know if the kickoff clash is to say anything.
We'll
it may
see.
not be a very good match. I think this is a fuel game. Honestly, I don't like Shocker. Great, but I mean they got rolled last time they met.
I want the Shock to win it, but I don't think they will. I think the Fuel has a strong identity. They know what they're going to play. They know how to play it. And they execute it perfectly.
Well, and the problem is like the way Fuel, if the Fuel are able to just play the Zarya comp, the way the Zarya comp is countered is Rhine comps. But unless Shock have just been grinding Rhine comps with Mikeyy, as soon as they got him, they're not gonna beat Fuel.
Yeah,
like,
and I don't think the Shock have figured out what they're going to do in this next few weeks yet. I think this game will be an awesome experience, an awesome test to see, what exactly the future of the Shock is, because they look not amazing in the tournament at certain points. Yeah. And so
this will be their test. Starting with the Fuel is not a very easy way to start, but Shock could overcome it. So we've got those first two fun matches on Thursday, and then we proceed to go into an Eye Bleach game potentially. Justice Excelsior. I don't like having to pred Washington, but like New York, I can't. No, I can't pred New York. Are you kidding me? I cannot pred New York.
And New York, I feel like they have good players, but they just haven't figured it out yet.
Maybe Kuki will do the Jake and he'll come into play. And just lead them. He'll do the comms. He'll come in as main tank.
Yeah, no.
No, Justice take this, because even a bad Justice, I think at least beat, even if it'll be a close game, Justice I think will be able to win it.
Yeah, I agree. And it could go like map 5 or something like that.
I hope it doesn't go to map 5. My brain does not need that match to go to 5. Please, no.
It's the last game of the day. If it's taking a while, you can just shut it off.
Shut it off.
No biggie.
So then we go to Friday.
Talking about shutting it off, Toronto Defiant are playing on Friday.
Against the London Spitfire. I'm taking London. Are you kidding me? I'm joining you on the London Spitfire train here.
Yeah. London are going to go 2-0 this week. And
London will go.
Wonderful.
I think London will go 1-1 this week. But even if the Florida Mayhem game will be good. Like, unlike, that'll be a good match. But this Defiant game, I mean, please, London, please beat Defiant.
And I think part of it is,
if London loses to Defiant, I don't know how much hope we'll be able to have in London again. Because, like, they should beat Toronto. They should. They really should.
Part of it is the Defiant have some internal stuff going on. Like, anytime you have a big dramatic leaving of a head coach being replaced by the assistant, like, it's gonna have some drama related, and just an adjustment period. And so I think that alone will push Defiant down a little bit. And I think already at the end of the last tournament cycle, like, London would have beat Toronto if they played. And I think, if anything, the last couple of weeks have been even more of a push to put Spitfire over the Defiant. Yeah. So I think London wins that.
Spitfire take over Defiant. Then we have Atlanta Reign, Boston Uprising. Even though Uprising were looking better, so were Atlanta. So sorry, Boston. I'm with Atlanta on this one. I think you are. I think
Atlanta definitely should win that one. And I think the next game's even less close. You have Titans, Glads, and I think
we're speed running these two. Yeah.
I mean, these two, there's not much to talk about. You have really good teams playing against less good teams. I think Boston
Boston
is
is
looking
way better than Titans, but I mean, there's still a big gap there.
But there's still like they won't beat the Reign.
I'm looking at this Titans Glads match though, and I'm looking for a speed run because this is
Yeah.
literally best team in the world against worst team in the world. Like, I'm looking for a speed run. We're looking for just run it down mid, Glads. Run all over this team, please. I don't want this match to last longer than it should.
Yeah, it's well, man, what's up with the Glad schedule this week? I mean, we'll get to their other match, but
But we
playing
have
Paris.
an Outlaws game in the middle. Crap. I look at this game and this looks like a trap game. This is like the definition of an Outlaws trap game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is also the definition of a Justice trap game. This Outlaws Justice match literally is a game of who's gonna throw harder.
Yeah, I
will not be pretting Justice never again against a team that even if it's a close game, Justice lose. I'm sorry, I can't. My Outlaws,
that should be the case, but I think the Outlaws have just as much possibility to disappoint, and I think that's gonna happen.
But the Justice disappoint more than the Outlaws do historically.
Yeah, but what's your win percent on Outlaws Preds?
60%.
You're what, 1 and 2?
Oh, yeah, I'm 1 and 2. Well, no, but then again, the one loss was against the Shock.
And who was the other loss against?
The other one was a map 5 against a Toronto that knew what they were doing, because the Toronto Defiant were the first ones to pull out the Tracer against the Doom, remember?
Yeah, I still I'm gonna go Justice on this one.
Yeah, I just can't have faith
just
in
the
because
Justice. Just because I've got a pred against you on this one, because you're bad luck for the Outlaws.
Only 1 and 2. It's not like I'm that bad at luck. Because I predded them against Toronto in the tournament when no one else did. I guess you did as well, but that just says a lot about Toronto than Outlaws.
Like, it's Toronto.
All right, so now we get to the other Glads match. Glads, Eternal. I'm sorry, Eternal. Goodbye.
Yeah, I think the Glads are going to set at least one map record this week.
In 6 tries, they're going to set one map record. I don't even think you have it. This is just a team diff. It's not going to be close. And if
they lose a map, at all this week, it's just like,
well, it's because
it's not.
No, it's well, no. If they lose a map, it's because they're not trying. I mean, Shock dropped them out to Titans. I mean, you'll be able to tell if they kind of take the foot off the gas, but they win that one. Now we go Fuel Rain. Last time they met, Fuel set the fastest push time ever. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed in the last week to
Fuel still take it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be
Fuel. Rain will be able to maybe be a little bit closer than they were in the kickoff clash, but I don't think it's enough to help them win. Fuel still take it. It should hopefully it's a better match than what we saw in the kickoff clash, but Fuel will still take that one. And now we get back to the Toronto Defiant Doomium against fan favorite Florida.
Yeah, I think it should be Florida.
Yep, I'm with you there. Mayhem should take it against Defiant. Defiant are just boring. Florida is fun.
Yeah.
End of story. Discussion over. And then Shock Uprising. Just like Uprising's last match. Sorry, Uprising, you're looking better, but I mean, the Shock are the Shock.
Yeah, and even though the Shock, have some figuring out to do, I think they're more established than Boston is.
I mean, Boston has been figuring themselves out, but they're just playing hard teams now.
Yeah.
Like, they looked good in that Justice game, and they won, but then they had to play Dallas, and then they have to play Atlanta, and then they have to play Shock. They're not.
Although, if the Shock bring out the Doom Fist,
the Shock,
they still win.
They still win. What are you talking about? And then now we get to what's probably a toilet bowl, unfortunately. Probably. Paris Eternal, New York Excelsior. This may not be very fun to watch. Against two teams that have probably no hope, actually zero hope of making it mid-season tournament, probably, unless they went perfect, which they can't because they're playing each other. So I'm on the Eternal side of things because I think Eternal were looking better at the end of the stage, whereas New York have been looking iffy, and New York is having to play Justice. So it's like they're having, and that game is winnable, I think, for New York if Justice throw. Whereas Paris is playing Glads. So if I'm Paris, I'm prepping for the NYXL match, not for the Glads match. Whereas if you're New York, you're like, well, we can't really write off the Washington match. So
Yeah, I still I'm gonna go with New York on this one.
you're going with New York. That's probably the
I
first
think
and only time you will pred New York, unless they're playing.
yeah, probably
Titans.
unless they play Titans. I think just looking at their roster, I like
There's no way this team should be that bad, right?
there's no way this team should be that bad. And every time I go to pred like any of New York's games, I look at both rosters and I'm like, why is New
Why
York
is New
such an
York
underdog?
crazy?
Why are they going to lose? But I think this game, it's just I think against tougher teams, having good players isn't enough. Against weaker teams, I think having good players is enough, and I think they're going to beat Paris because of that. I don't think that. I mean, and I think the one exception, if Glister is just playing out of his mind like he does sometimes, then Paris wins.
Well,
But
I think Wub might be able to do some things as well. Because I mean, well, no, Flora I think diffs Wub. The biggest thing is Glister versus Yaki, who's able to do more with it.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely.
But I think I would take New York's. I would take Kellen over Paris's tank line. I would. I mean, Paris has better main support.
Yeah, I was like, be careful about what you say about the supports.
Yeah, and so
it'll be a close game, but it may not be a very good one for the eyes.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm all
right. So we're split there.
Sticking
and
with
then
XL.
The final one. I swear to goodness, if you pick just out of spite, if you pick the Titans against the Outlaws.
No, Outlaws win this one. They better.
Although
part of me is like, if there's a game that the Outlaws are going to lose,
don't you think about it? Don't you dare!
I'm not gonna pred it, but
part of
I'm
you,
putting
that little voice in your head.
I'm putting a little side note that like it could happen. And if it does,
my goodness,
it's gonna be beautiful.
It would be such an Outlaws thing to do. But here's the thing, though: if they lose to Washington, they don't lose to Titans. Like they wouldn't go back for the. When it comes to the Outlaws, it's like one-offs.
Yeah.
So it's like if they beat the Justice, okay, then maybe on like a blue moon they lose to the Titans. But if they lose to Justice, no, they're just taking their anchor out on the Titans.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Houston wins. I think.
All right.
It's going to be a close game.
We set the precedent. So how many splits did we were split on London, Florida. We were split on Outlaws Justice. We were split on NYXL Paris. So we were split on 3 games, correct?
Yeah.
I think that was it. So I don't know if either of us will go perfect, but we'll see if one of us is able to pull ahead this week. I really don't know. If that's
actually one of us has to pull ahead.
Oh, one of us will have to pull ahead against one because we have an odd number of uneven matches. I just hope the Outlaws don't boom me again. I need London to boom you. I want my mayhem, my Florida mayhem stonks to come through.
Yeah. I feel iffy about that. I'll be honest.
About picking London.
I'm keeping it. Yeah.
Well,
I'm keeping it.
And that's fair because I mean, like, unlike London, where you're like, okay, well, is London's strategy gonna work? You're like, but you look at Florida and like, what has Florida done to suggest that they're not gonna beat London? Like they haven't. Like unlike other teams like Justice, Outlaws, Defiant, you're like, no, they definitely could lose matches to lower teams. You look at Florida and you're like, nothing. The only teams they've lost to are teams better than them.
Florida has been probably the most consistent of the mid-tier teams.
I would say Florida is almost the most consistent out of any of the NA teams because you remember Glads at the beginning of the kickoff clash looked rough.
Yeah, week 1 doesn't count.
And even like, I mean, and Dallas looked good as well, but then Dallas. So it's like Dallas and Mayhem are like in there for like most consistent teams because Shock went 6-0 and then they just flamed out. You're like, what the heck? And then Atlanta got rolled by Glads in London. Meanwhile, Mayhem, it's like they beat the lower teams, they lose to the good teams, they beat the good team, they beat the the bad team in the tournament, they lose to the good team. Well, what more can you say?
Yeah, it's
You
it's a
can
mess.
you can rely on the mayhem. Unlike the Outlaws, I can rely on the mayhem.
Yeah, but they'll lose to London.
All right, maybe. So that was basically the middle week, full of news, full of preds, full of power rankings. But games return on Thursday, along with Overwatch 2 announcements, beta signups, new patch. Thursday's gonna be kind of hype, not gonna lie. And
Gonna be pretty sick.
2 out of the 3 games on Thursday are pretty cool. So Thursday's actually it's a pretty good. I mean, overall, I'd say this week's matches are good, except for like the Titans games and the NYXL Paris game, right? Like,
Yeah.
outside of those 3, because even though the Defiant looked tragic, London and Florida are fun. So,
And when it comes down to it, do you know what it feels like? It feels like it's Morbin time.
Gosh, dang it. Did you see that petition? That like 20,000 signatures? They were like, we were all busy that weekend, put it back in theaters.
I heard that they brought it back in some theaters.
Yep, they
And
brought
it,
it
like-
back. No, they brought it
and
back
it-
to 1,000 theaters, and each theater
Didn't
earned
it-
an average of $82 or something
Yeah,
like
I was
that.
going to say it was terrible. It did nothing.
I-
Which I saw it in theaters, like way back when it first came out, and like, me and my wife, like, I tend to be pickier with movies, but usually she'll see anything multiple times. Like,
Mhm.
she's not really picky
and
about
even
movies.
she was like,
We
no
got
thanks.
finished with that movie, and she was like, "We're never watching that again. That was terrible." And I was like,
very cool.
"Yeah, it
very
was."
Cool.
But
Oh,
anyway,
man. Anyways,
Morbius, watch it.
no, don't do that. Don't listen to him. Enjoy this week's games, and hopefully everything this week goes according to plan, and we just have good games. So we'll see you all
Yeah.
next week. Have
Have
a
a groovy
wonderful
day.
We'll see you.